marble floors, flashing blue lights outside the iron gates. The kind of night when money thinks it can order the truth. Sophia stood in the foyer with her hands trembling, a dish towel still tucked in her apron. 2 officers stepped past the gold staircase. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for theft," one said, voice flat. Theft. Her breath snagged. Of what? Robert Whitmore, billionaire, wolf-gray suit, stared at the empty velvet stand where his late wife's sapphire cuff had gleamed an hour ago. "It was here," he muttered. "Now it's not." John, head of security, crossed his arms. "We reviewed the feeds. Gaps. Around her cleaning schedule." Sophia looked at Michael, Robert's teenage son. He stood in the doorway, headphones around his neck, a camera strap across his shoulder. He didn't meet anyone's eyes. He was counting under his breath, fingertips tapping, 1, 2, 3, 4, anchoring himself. He heard everything. He missed nothing. "Mr. Whitmore." "Robert, please," Sophia whispered. "I would never." "Let them do their job," Evelyn, Robert's PR chief, cut in, sleek and certain. "We have a gala tomorrow. Optics matter." A thin night wind shivered through the foyer. Somewhere, a clock clicked. A tiny, crisp tick, tick, tick. Michael turned to that sound like it was calling his name. "Do you know who did this, Michael?" Sophia asked softly. He pressed his palms to his thighs. "The timeline is wrong," he said, voice careful, each word placed like a tile. "The cameras blinked off at 9:12. The cuff was last seen at 9:07. The staff break was 9:20. The alarm chirp at the service door lasted 12 seconds, not 10. That's not right." Evelyn smiled without warmth. "Honey, that's very observant. But the police." John lifted a hand. "Kid, let us handle it." Michael didn't look up. His gaze drifted to the polished floor, where a pin-thin scratch cut through the reflection of the chandelier. He memorized its angle. Noted the glitter of something in that scar, like a grain of metal. He took a shallow breath. "You're seeing it too, right? The pieces that don't fit. The cold confidence. The quick blame. Have you ever watched a room decide who the villain is before the evidence caught up?" "Sir," an officer said to Robert. "We need to take her in." Robert closed his eyes. A father, a boss, a man who'd forgotten what it meant to trust. "Cooperate, Sophia," he said, and the words sounded like they'd been dragged across gravel. They guided her away, the dish towel falling to the floor. "Dad," Michael said, barely above a whisper. "They're wrong." Robert's jaw worked. "Michael, not now." Michael crouched and pinched something from the scratch in the marble. He slid it into his pocket. His face didn't change. But his tapping stopped at 4. "Do you think he should speak up? Would you risk being ignored to protect someone who believed in you?" Michael lifted the camera to his eye and snapped a photo of the empty velvet stand, then the reflection in the glass. In that reflection, a wrist with a small, crescent burn scar ghosted the edge of the frame. Morning bled into the mansion like a cold mist. Staff whispered in doorways. Headlines pinged in Evelyn's phone. "Crisis expanding," she murmured. "We'll issue a statement by noon." Robert paced his office. Wood-paneled walls watched him back. John, lock down every entrance. Pull the last 6 hours from all cameras. "Already did," John said. "Convenient outages. Someone knew the system." "Convenient," Michael echoed from the doorway. He held his camera tight like a railing on a moving train. "Or staged." Evelyn turned, hands folded. "Michael, sweetheart, this is adult business." He shrugged. "Truth is everyone's business." He set a printed photo on the desk. Not the empty stand. The reflection. Who has a crescent burn on their left wrist? John's sleeve twitched. Lots of people get burns. Kitchen staff. Garden crew. Garden crew use gloves, Michael said. And Sophia's burn is on her right hand. She told me. From sizzling onions. He blinked once, slowly. Left wrist. Different. Robert's gaze flicked to John. Why didn't we see this? John's jaw tightened. Image is distorted. Distorted doesn't mean useless, Michael said. It means you need context. He moved to the window. Outside, the fountain splashed its steady pattern. 6 beats, pause, 6 beats. He breathed with it. He found his rhythm. He remembered the sound of the service door chirp. 12 seconds, too long. The system manual in his head said 10. 2 seconds were borrowed from somewhere. Or given. Dad, he said, still watching the water. If you change the timestamp clock without resensing the chime will drift. It would sing the wrong time. Someone tampered with clocks. Not Sophia. Robert rubbed his temples. How do you know that? Because I listen, Michael said simply. Do you ever notice tiny patterns others miss? Would you trust them when the crowd points a different way? Emma, the florist, slipped in with a tray of tea. Mr. Whitmore, I brought chamomile. Thank you, Emma, Robert said absently. Michael watched the steam curl. In the silver teapot, another ghostly reflection. A man's wrist as he reached to adjust a tie. The same crescent mark. He clicked a photo. Snap. He laid a second print beside the first. The crescent looked sharper now. He drew a circle with a pencil. John, he said, still gentle. When did you get burned? John didn't blink. A week ago. Griddle, at the staff cookout. We didn't have a cookout last week, Emma whispered. Rain. Evelyn's phone buzzed. Her eyes narrowed as if calculating risk. Enough. The police have Sophia. That satisfies donors for now. We move on. Robert looked at Michael. Something wavered in his gaze. What are you saying, son? I'm saying, Michael answered. Someone framed Sophia. And the system clock didn't lie. People did. Michael turned his camera around and showed the third photo he had taken, this time of a polished security badge. In the badge, the cuff's blue gleam flashed for an instant, tucked inside a leather glove. At the precinct, fluorescent lights hummed. Sophia sat on a bench, palms laced, eyes fixed on the floor. I keep going over my steps, she told the public defender. Wipe the stand. Check the curtains. Take out recycling. That's it. I didn't touch the cuff. The lawyer nodded. They'll process you and set conditions. We'll argue release. Back at the mansion, Michael turned the music in his headphones off. He needed quiet. He lined up 3 photos on the carpet. Reflection in glass. Reflection in teapot. Reflection in badge. Crescent burn. Leather glove. Blue gleam. He whispered to himself, soft as a secret. Angles. Timestamps. Drift. He opened the security console he'd memorized from watching John. The logs were there. Door chime 9:12. Camera blackout 9:12. Alarm ping 9:12. Too neat. Real life is messy, he said. People who fake it forget mess. He checked the maintenance records. A firmware update last night. Approved by John. Michael. Robert stood in the doorway, tie loosened. He looked older in the gray morning. You're supposed to be at school. I am at school, Michael said. The subject is listening. Robert came in slowly. Sat on the floor beside his son. It took effort. It mattered. Teach me, then. Michael aligned the photos with a ruler. Light bounces. It keeps truth even when eyes are busy. Cameras blink, but reflections keep going. Whoever took the cuff wore a glove. Not a maid's glove. A tactical glove. Leather. Seam at the base of the thumb. He tapped the badge photo. And the badge shows a crest. Security Division. Robert exhaled. John. Maybe, Michael said. Or someone using John's badge. Evelyn's voice sliced into the room. Press is outside. We need a statement blaming procedural failures and promising an internal review. Procedural failures, Michael repeated, tasting the words. Like changing clocks. Evelyn blinked. What? Nothing, Michael said. I'm building a timeline. Do you feel the shift when someone finally listens to the quiet person? Have you ever been that quiet person? He opened a drawer. Inside lay a tiny device, a key fob with a hidden camera, something he'd tinkered with. He clipped it to his shirt. I need to see John's locker. Robert rose. That's not safe. It's careful, Michael said. There's a difference. In the security wing, the corridors were colder. John's office door stood ajar. Michael slipped in, eyes scanning. Locker. Vent above it. He felt the draft with his palm. He listened to the whisper of air. Airflow changes when something blocks it, he murmured. He pulled a screwdriver from his pocket, the one Sophia always let him keep because clever hands need tools. 2 screws. A grill. A narrow cavity. He reached. Footsteps. John. What are you doing here, kid? John's voice was soft steel. Michael kept his breath steady. Learning. John's smile didn't touch his eyes. Curiosity can be dangerous. Michael's fingers brushed velvet. He pinched fabric and pulled. The sapphire cuff winked in the gray light, just as John's hand closed around Michael's wrist. Put it back, John hissed. His grip tightened. Left wrist. Crescent burn. Close now. Undeniable. Michael's voice didn't rise. He had learned long ago that volume wasn't the same as power. It doesn't belong here. John's eyes flicked to the hall. You don't want to make a scene. Michael slid the cuff into his pocket. He didn't fight the hand. He lowered his gaze, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, until the air stopped wobbling. Then he said, okay. He walked out with John glued to his shoulder. Downstairs, Emma looked up from a vase of lilies. Her eyes widened at Michael's pocket. She didn't speak. She shifted one bloom 3 inches to the left. Signal received. In Robert's office, Michael stood by the window again, using the fountain's rhythm to calm the pulse in his throat. Robert entered with Evelyn in tow. What's this? Robert asked. A rehearsal, Michael said. For the statement. Evelyn nodded, puzzled. Proceed. Michael glanced at the corner of the room where the antique mirror stood. He angled himself so the mirror framed John's left side. He slipped the cuff from his pocket with 2 fingers and let the mirror catch it. Sapphire fire danced. John swallowed. Dad, Michael said. If the thief wanted to clear their name fast, they would discover the cuff during a search. They would cry relief. They would push the narrative that the maid planted it. But the cuff is here. In our house. In a vent above a locker. With fingerprints inside the velvet and none outside. That's staging. Evelyn folded her arms. This is speculative. Michael tapped his camera. Not if we let the reflections speak. He lifted the device and replayed the key fob video. John's locker. The vent. The pull. The cuff emerging. John's hand grabbing Michael's wrist. Full frame. Crescent burn printed like a signature. Robert watched, color draining from his face. He looked at John. Explain. John's jaw worked. The boy trespassed. He planted. Planted. Michael repeated. I didn't bring a vent with me. Do you see how fast a lie changes shape when the truth won't move? If you were Robert, what would you do now? Sirens rose outside. Emma had called. Or Evelyn had. It didn't matter. It mattered. What's the angle? Evelyn whispered to Robert. We can spin this as a rogue employee. The angle is truth, Robert said. His voice steadied around the word like a spine. And an apology. John lunged for the door. Security converged. He ducked, fast and trained. But you cannot outrun a camera that has already told on you. 2 officers arrived. We have a call about stolen property. Robert nodded toward the vent. Check it. And his locker. They did. The cuff. A pouch of cash. A list of schedules. And a tiny device for clock sync. John stared at Michael, something like respect twisted by rage. You think you're clever. Michael shook his head. I think I'm careful. As they led John away, he turned once more and said, You still won't find the second cuff. Michael's breath caught. Second cuff. The gala lights glowed in boxes on the lawn, rescheduled but not cancelled. Money rarely cancels itself. But the air held a different weight tonight. Sophia stepped through the doorway, flanked by the public defender and a sergeant who'd apologized twice already. Charges dropped. I can finish the glasses, she said out of habit. Robert shook his head, eyes wet. No. Tonight, you're a guest. He faced the donors. Microphones waited like hungry birds. Evelyn hovered, but she didn't speak. My home made a mistake, Robert said. I made a mistake. A woman who has worked here with dignity and kindness was accused because it was easy. Because of class. Because someone like me found it simpler to trust systems over people. That ends tonight. He turned to Sophia. I'm sorry. Sophia swallowed. Thank you. Michael stood at the edge of the platform, headphones around his neck, the world's noise still loud but not unkind. Emma squeezed his shoulder. Proud of you, she whispered. He nodded, scanning the crowd. Patterns again. Movements. Hands. He spotted Evelyn at the bar, polished calm. A flash of blue at her wrist. Not sapphire. A reflection. The second cuff existed because the set had always been 2. His mother's. One in the vent. One where? Michael remembered Evelyn's phrase, optics matter. He remembered her urging to keep Sophia in custody until after the gala. Controlled narratives. Controlled timing. He moved through the guests like a fish through reeds. Excuse me. Sorry. Passing. At the PR station, a glass case displayed sponsor gifts. Little velvet boxes. He opened one. Empty. Another. Empty. The third. Wait. He lifted the lid. The second cuff rested inside. Looking for this? Evelyn asked behind him. Michael didn't turn. Yes. She sighed. John never understood the dance. He grabbed. He rushed. He forgot mess makes stories believable. I gave the story time. Her voice was cool and tired. The board wanted new security contracts. Fear sells. Michael closed the box. You framed Sophia. I framed a solution, Evelyn said. And I was going to return the second cuff after the gala. Tearful discovery. Perfect arc. Do you feel your stomach drop when the room's architect steps out of the shadows? Would you have guessed the villain wasn't the loudest suspect, but the most polished one? Robert appeared at Michael's side. Evelyn. She didn't flinch. We needed donors calm. Robert's face hardened. We needed the truth. Michael lifted his camera and tilted it slightly so the lens caught Evelyn's face, the glass case, the cuff. Reflections nested inside reflections. He didn't threaten. He didn't raise his voice. He simply pressed record. Evelyn looked at the lens and saw the end of her version. You're good, she said to Michael, almost kindly. You listen. Everyone should, Michael answered. Security and the sergeant approached. It was gentler, this time. No cuffs on Sophia. No shouting. Just quiet process and a long exhale. Later, beneath the soft lanterns, Sophia stood by the fountain. The water kept its 6-beat rhythm. She turned to Michael. You saved me. Michael shook his head. You believed in me. When others wanted me to be quieter, you never did. I returned the favor. Robert joined them. I want to set something right, he said. Not with money alone. He looked at Michael. We'll build a program in your mother's name. Fair hiring for staff. Independent review for accusations. And a scholarship for students who see the world differently. Maybe they'll teach us to listen. Michael breathed in the night. For once, the sounds softened around him. He looked at Sophia. Deal. Deal, she said, smiling. Thought-provoking question for viewers. When a room rushes to choose a villain, who do you listen to? The loudest voice, the most polished one, or the quiet person tracing patterns in the noise?